Hello, I'm your host, Max Zhang, founder of the Human Prosperity. Today, I have Jenn on the show. Excited to have you, Jenn. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, Max, thanks for having me. I'm Jennifer Whittingham. I'm a senior manager over user experience design and research, leading large teams across companies. I've been in startup companies. I've had my own business. I've worked across multiple industries over the last 20 years doing user experience and design and leading teams.
Okay, awesome. That's definitely a lot of accomplishments. Can you tell us a little bit more about, UX or user experience design?
So user experience design is kind of an umbrella under customer experience. Customer experience is really understanding who your customers are, who's using your platform. So an example would be like Airbnb. So you have your digital platform that you go into, the website, you look for, your place that you want to stay at. You make the transaction online. And then the second part of that is actually the physical interaction. So going to the Airbnb and your experience at that Airbnb. And then until you leave the Airbnb and go home, and you can say that whole experience from start to end was simple, easy, and a great experience that you would return to. So that's customer experience. I lead the teams that design the software and the experiences. So we do a lot of problem solving, strategy. We look at who are using the platforms and do some research, whether that's through testing to really understand what their needs are, what their problems are to fix that software, and do whatever we can to make that experience for people online and in person as enjoyable as possible.
Awesome. And that's what it is about. It's about the experience, about making the experience enjoyable. And, if you cannot enjoy the experience of, going to a hotel or using a website, these people are just not going to come back.
Right. Exactly.
And so how would you go about designing good user experience?
The first thing that we do when we're looking at a good user experience is we understand normally, we'll be asked to do something by leadership. We want to build this thing. We want to do this thing. And so that's the business ask that they have. And they have a purpose behind that, which is typically monetary or, part of the culture that they want to present. So what we do is we take that problem statement and then we go validate it to make sure that we're solving the right problem before we put all the time, effort, and money into building that solution. So we'll go talk to who the users are, so customers, whoever is using the platform, to really understand what is their need, what do they want to solve with this. And then we compare that with what the business wants to do. And typically what we find is that it's what the business wants to do and what the user want to do are two different things. And so if we don't align those two, neither one's going to be successful. So we have to go back to the business and say, okay, we know you want to do this, but we've got to tip the scale 90 or like 10 degrees to the left in order to hit the target. And this is how we can do it. And then we will provide that user experience of what these people want to do by solving that, how that aligns with the business experience. And once we've done that, then what we'll do is we'll go to the teams and we will say, okay, this is what we're going to build next. This is the business goal. This is the user goal. What is the technology that we have access to or that we can afford in our budget to use to build this product? And then what we'll do is we'll pull all the stakeholders together to come up with the best solution that we can build within all of the means to meet that user need, meet that business goal, and, do it at the best cost that we can do it at through that technology.
Yeah, that's definitely where the magic is, being able to understand what the business needs are and also the customer's problem and have that alignment. As you said, without that alignment, it's just not going to work for either of them. So,
yeah, I always say if you work with just the business and the technology, you can build something great. But if the users don't have any need for it, then it's not going to be successful. And if you only go with the business and the user need, well, you could come up with the best idea out there, but we can't build it with the technology that we have. And same with the user and the technology. Well, we could come up with the best thing for that user, but maybe it doesn't meet the business needs. So you've really got to find that sweet spot in between all three in order to have that successful product.
A lot of companies, to focus too much on, the technology, the product, and they forget about the user experience, and that's why they fail.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And you spend a lot of money doing that, and then you have to iterate on it until you figure that out. But what user experience does is it allows you to figure that out before you've built the product. And that way, what they say is, if you do the user experience in the beginning, it costs you $1. If you do it during the development phase, it's $10. And if you do it after everything's built, it costs you $100. So it's way more beneficial and efficient if you do that user research ahead of time and really figure out what the problem is in the very front. Even though it may take a little more time, you're really actually saving yourself 10x the cost to do it upfront and early.
Mm-hmm. So for someone that's actually starting, not starting out per se, but maybe in a lead role or a manager role, that how they go about getting to your level?
I remember when I was going from being an individual contributor to a manager to a senior manager, and it's very different. You bring your skill set, you bring your knowledge of the craft into being a manager, but nobody really trains you to be a manager. You kind of, they're like, you're good at what you do. You've led, other designers when you were a lead designer, and now you're moving into this manager phase. And I think in the first year or two, you want everybody to do it just like you did it, and how it's going to be successful. And then you're micromanaging these people, and that's not a good leader, I don't believe. And so what you have to do is kind of take 2 steps back and go, you had your time designing, and now it's somebody else's. And even though you knew how to do it the best that you knew how to do it, it's now their turn to do it. And they may bring something to the table that you didn't think about that could actually be better. So you've got to put your trust now into your individual contributors to do what they know how to do best. You can give your advice, answer their questions when needed, and guide them, but it's now your time to really mentor and coach versus really doing the project yourself or giving them, exactly how you want it done versus allowing them to be creative and grow into that position. So I think that's the first step of being a manager, is knowing when to step back and allow your people the autonomy to do what they want to do and take pride in what they do versus just taking orders. And then after that, it's really learning how to manage up and manage down in between the two, understanding the business goals a lot more, understanding the metrics of, how are you going to hit these targets, looking at the outcomes of what this will be doing, the long-term goals, and then how are you giving your team the short-term goals to accomplish that long-term goal. So I think those are all big learning lessons in getting to that role. And I think everybody has their ups and downs in their career. You're constantly climbing a hill and then having to go back down in the trenches to learn the next thing. And you have to remember, I think for me, I finally was okay with it when I realized life is like your job, and you're climbing hills and valleys the whole time, and you celebrate at the hilltops, and then you have to go back down into the trenches to learn your next lesson and grow. That's where you do your growing, and the top of the hill is where you do your celebrating of that growth. But then you have to go back down into it. So it's not always an uphill, climb. It's up and down, and you're gradually moving up.
Yeah, definitely. And this also sideways as well. So.
Oh yeah. And sometimes backwards. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So I mean, it's not about the destination. It's not about how you go about doing it. It's really about the experience, the journey. So as long as you're enjoying yourself at every single step, doesn't matter it's backward, forward, downward, upward. As long as you are enjoying yourself, that is the key.
I agree. Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how you got to where you are today?
I've always been creative. When I was young, I did a lot of drawing and painting and got some awards through that. And then my parents were always like, well, why don't you go into art, which is very different than most. But I was like, no, I'm not going to make any money in art. And the internet didn't exist at that time. And so I went to college for architecture to start because I thought, well, that's creative and I can make money doing that. And I really loved building and creating homes. And so I went into architecture. In my fourth year of architecture, which was a 5-year program, I wanted to learn AutoCAD. That had just come out, and they said I had to go to the engineering school. So I went to the engineering school and designed airplane parts in AutoCAD to understand AutoCAD. And then I was able to start building buildings in AutoCAD, which I really, really enjoyed. And at that time, that's when Photoshop and Adobe and Illustrator had just come out. And my professor was like, Jen, come look at this. And I fell in love with it. I was like, what is this? And so I started playing around a lot more in there. It was right back to my roots of being artistic and, drawing that perfect circle, which you can't do by hand. And being able to do that on a computer was amazing. And the internet had just come out as well. So now I'm saying how old I am. But I remember them showing me that too. And it was just this long list of information. And I remember thinking to myself, this is incredible, but how do you find anything? It was all like an alphabet, and you went into the alphabet to look up whatever you wanted. And then I got my first job out of school working for a marketing agency, designing graphics for educational software and doing an experience for the Phoenix Zoo. And then I left there and we moved to the Bay Area in San Francisco, where I worked for a startup called the Holiday Channel in San Jose. And we basically, because the internet was so new, we were able to purchase all the holiday channels. So Santa.com, Christmas.com, Valentine's Day. And we built out one of the first, I would say first, e-commerce sites. Couldn't do payment online, but it was basically like an online catalog. And then you would call in to pay for whatever you were purchasing, and we would mail it out to you. We put on the first .com parade in San Francisco. We had Christina Aguilera on our float, and it was actually a really fun, exciting time because everything was new. So you just created whatever you wanted if you could create it. So nothing was impossible. It was just, how could you do it? We created some of the first animated GIF e-cards, which was really fun too. I then had 2 children, 2 daughters, and I wanted to really be with them and be a mom. And I loved being a mom. So what I did is I left that job and started up my own company doing branding, marketing, websites for other companies so that I could be with my kids when they were young. And I would work at night and be mom during the day and when they were taking their naps. And I did that for about 10 years. We moved to Arizona, and one of my larger clients said, will you come and be our director of UX in Los Angeles? And so I did that. Closing the laptop, not working 24/7 sounded pretty good. So I went and did that. That was in a media company. So it was around influencers and content. And so we built an influencer platform that paired influencers with large brands and targeted their markets and did creative campaigns for them that they could control and put on their platforms to save them time, which was really fun. We sold that to a company in Colombia. It was basically like the BuzzFeed of Latin America. And so we sold that to a company in Colombia. And then I went on to work for some larger corporate companies like Hewitt, McKesson, and Discount Tire, running their design teams and building out their products.
Wow, that's amazing. So what was it like meeting Christina?
Oh, it was really cool. She's very, very sweet. She was tiny and petite. It was cold, so her hands were freezing. We worked with Build-A-Bear actually to create all our Santa costumes. on the float, and she got up there and sang. Everybody knew who she was at this time, but it was pretty early in her career. I think it was 1998 that was happening. So, but she was amazing. She very, very sweet. And she did a great job on the floats. I think you can look it up online too. It's probably still on there, but it was a really good time. And we called it the Santa.com parade in San Francisco. It was down on the wharf.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you get an autograph or some other momentum? You could be like, well, Newlands today.
No, we didn't. We didn't ask for anything, but she was cold, so we handed her our gloves, and so she has our gloves, but we don't have anything from her.
Amazing. Yeah. So, I mean, like throughout your journey, I mean, there's definitely a lot of challenges as well, you know, and I understand you're a single mother, and, you know, having to work and being a mother too, you know, that's definitely, you know, a challenge as well, So can you tell us a little bit more about that and how do you go about managing, you know, balancing the two?
It was challenging. When they were really young, like I said, I had my own business, so I could be with them. It was long nights to getting the work done and keeping clients happy. When we moved here, they were then in school and preschool, and that was also tough. So I took a little break actually from designing because I wanted to be home with them. And so I actually did some jobs. Well, I wouldn't say it was a break, actually. I still had my clients, but I went to work for a doctor in a doctor's office because his hours were the same as the school hours. So I could drop off the kids at school. I could go to the doctor's office. And basically, I ran anything digital for them, built their websites. He was doing nutraceuticals. So I did all the labels and the branding, and even got myself into some weird jobs there where he wanted to then start doing his own nutraceutical production. So I got to put my architecture skills to work and build out the building and see it built, which was really exciting. And then he had me running that building while doing the private labeling for all his customers and doing the websites and running that business for him. But my hours were from 9 to 3, and on Fridays I was out by noon. So I could go pick up the kids and, you know, bring them home and be with them afterwards. Once they were in middle school, then, you know, they were on their own and they were old enough. So that's when I really went on to work for Me Too with as their sole researcher, but I was able to do that from home. I think the toughest thing was really balancing all that out. As you know how good you used to be at your job, but now you're raising 2 kids. You can't be working through the night. You can't, you got to kind of put things away and be a mom as well. And so you look back and you're like, I know I'm better than this, even though you're doing a great job. You say to yourself, I know I can do better at this. And when I took off a few years to be a mom, I used to say, you could be a better mom, because you're not able to put 100% into either one. And so I think you get a little hard on yourself at times because you're like, I feel like I'm failing at both because I know I can do better. But in reality, when you look backwards, it's all a blessing in disguise. I think, your kids are more independent and you learn that you don't have to be perfect at everything to get the job done. But I don't think you see it in the moment. You just have to keep moving forward. And then when my kids were in high school and then they went off to college, I really was able to put 100% into my work. And then I was like, I'm going to prove that I'm as good as I remember I was. And you do that and you work really hard. Then you can also hit a burnout at some point too, which you have to be really, really careful of.
You did amazing. I mean, you raised 2 kids and, lead a design team and things like that. So that is an amazing accomplishment. So that's something you have to recognize yourself and never forget about that.
Yeah, I think I look back now and I'm it is one of my top accomplishments. My older daughter is now in user experience and my younger one is a flight attendant for United traveling the world. And they've turned out to be amazing, adults. So I remind myself all the time, just looking at them, that I did a good job. They're great kids. So
Yeah, because you're an amazing mother.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I do want to know more about, some how do you go about achieving, the high performance that you do? Like, what are some of your secrets and some of your daily habits that enable that?
For me, I love the craft of what I do. I also love people. The craft for me, I was always curious. I was always learning. I always wanted to know more. I was always looking at what is the newest technology. I think, and my parents have always said this, when you do something you love, you're going to be successful regardless, because you don't look at it as a job. You look at it as something you wake up in the morning and you're excited to do. With that, I think there are days you wake up and you're like, oh, it's another day. It's not what it used to be, etc. And you've just got to keep pushing forward and reminding you, like, what is your purpose? Why are you doing this? Because I will say, especially as you get higher up, it gets harder and harder to see. You feel like you're fighting more than you are, creating and being creative and doing the things you loved again. But there's always a purpose behind it. I think that drives you to continue moving forward and to ignore those pieces that are really bringing you down. And that's the most important thing, is reminding yourself, what is your purpose? Are you doing this because you love it? So for me, when I was an individual contributor, I loved the craft. I loved solving the problem. When I had my own business, I loved the look on my client's face when you delivered something that just made their day. It was that look on their face that I was striving for, that, I made them happy by creating this thing. With my teams, it was always, do you feel supported? Am I giving you the autonomy to make you feel proud about what you're doing? Do you feel supported? Do you feel, that you have the tools you need to do what you need to do? Do you feel trusted? When the teams feel trusted, when they feel appreciated, they're really going to go out of their way to do a really great job. So I think if you take care of them, they're going to take care of you. And that's what I've found. I've had 100% retention of my teams in the last 6 years. Even when I leave, they're coming out and asking me to go to lunch. And that's what my purpose is. It's making sure that now, once I've done my craft and I can lead teams and I can make a difference in business, and it's not even me, it's the teams that are making that difference, but I'm helping them make that difference. That's my purpose. It's allowing others to experience their greatness. I think that's what really drives me. So even when I'm in a bad situation and maybe I'm getting pounded, because as a manager, it's not a glory, it's not that pretty job. I mean, you have to go in there thinking, okay, you're going to give away the wins to your team. You're going to let them take those wins. When something goes wrong, you're going to take responsibility for it, right? And it's your fault that it went wrong because you didn't guide those teams to do what they needed to do. And even there's times when you have people that you've coached and mentored to get to a position that can take your role, they may then even believe, and this isn't very often, but there's that one or two that believe they're better than you. And now they're going to, pound on you to say they're better than you. And you're like, okay, that's fine. You should take my job, and I'm going to, hopefully my boss sees that I got you to that place, that now I can give you that position and I can be promoted to the next one. So I think it's a servant leader position, and it's not the one that you should be taking the kudos for when something's done well. It's your team. When something's gone wrong, it's your responsibility to fix it and do all those things. So, and the creativity it's falling off the wayside. You're now more of a coach, a mentor, and a strategist going into those things. So you have to be ready for those things. And that's hard sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. There are a lot of managers, they just think that you just tell people what to do and that's it, but that's not, a leader, that's just, that's, I'm not even sure what to call it. But But the real magic happens, when you actually care about the people that you work with, deeply care
Yeah.
about them, understand them on a personal level, even.
Yes.
And then, also, once you actually do that, they care about you, and they will actually be able to receive feedback and, be really able to make that connection. This is actually part of the radical candor framework. Once you have this care personally, then you can actually go to move to the second step, which is able to challenge it directly. That's when you can actually really, achieve high performance, being able to tell them exactly, hey, this is not working, this is not working. How can we actually go about, making things better? So when you actually have both, cared about them personally and challenge them directly, magic happens.
100%. Yes, that is very true.
Yeah, and then you got to mention about purpose. Definitely. I mean, like that is like the essence of true leadership. Having that purpose and actually being able to really get people on board with your purpose, with the mission of the company, with the mission that you have, and that's where true leadership comes from. And definitely, sometimes you have to slow down to really kind of understand, what that purpose is. Just take a break and understand you're doing that break right now to actually find your next purpose. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so right now, I left my last role and I took the summer off. I'm in my 50s. I don't mind saying that. And I think at that point in your career, you can continue to climb the ladder and hit those goals that, maybe you want to do. Mine was eventually to become a chief experience officer. I still think that's fun. I still love my craft. And then at the same time, you think to yourself, at this age, should I be putting more time into my life and my family and the people that, surround me and those events, because you're in your prime to be spending that time with those people, with your parents, etc. And so you start to think, which direction do you want to go? I've put so much time into my career and into doing that. I mean, sometimes it was 12-hour days and your family, they were put to the side. And at some point, was it worth it? So right now, I'm just contemplating, what is my next thing I want to do? Do I want to continue climbing? And can I find that balance? Or do I want to find something I really enjoy doing? Is it going back to being an individual contributor? Because I know how to do that and I know how to do it well, but that gives me, the other part of my life to go travel and enjoy my fiance that I have now and my girls and my parents. And I still am figuring that out. And I think that's a normal stage at this part in my life. I've talked to a lot of my other coworkers that are in the same stage and they're struggling with the same thing. So which way do you go? You're kind of on that tightrope of figuring that out. So I think hopefully I figure it out soon.
And it just takes some time to figure out what's the next step, and that's okay. You can just use that as a little break to kind of enjoy life in the present moment. And the key to really figuring out that is really more about figuring out what makes you really fulfilled, what makes you really happy. So ultimately, it's not about chasing the title, not chasing the money. Those are just secondary to what you really truly makes you fulfilled. So it's really about going back to your roots. What really makes you happy. Is it just to enjoy time with your family? Is it just to enjoy traveling? And if that's really what you enjoy, design your life around it.
Exactly. Yes. And even now, I'm going through interviews with companies and I found myself interviewing them more because I was thinking to myself, I love my craft. I love what I do, but I have to be doing it with people that I love being around as well. And so who's going to be my manager? Who's going to be, the leaders? What is the way that they lead? What are the teams? I know I can do a good job with the teams and I'm very persuasive in getting them to do a really good job at what they do just by trusting them. And I figured that piece out. I don't really care about the money anymore. It's more about, am I going to be a good fit in this? Because then I can do what I love doing with people that I love being around, and then the environment, like you said, as well. Maybe a remote position is really good because I have the freedom to spend the time where I am. I think they trust that you're going to do your job and it's all shown in, the outcomes of what you do. And then that gives me the autonomy to be with my family, do the craft I love, etc. It is interesting how now, instead of going into an interview, you're like, yeah, I'm the best person for you. I'm like, are you the best person for me? You know? Is this the right place for me and where I want to put my 8 hours or 9 hours a day? So I've noticed that a big change in me when going into those interviews now.
That's amazing. And definitely, a lot of times, when we do interviews, we just, kind of think about, okay, can I get this job? Can I get this job? We're worrying about that. But you really think about, is this the right place for me? Those are the actual right questions. Is this the place where allows me to grow, allows me to enjoy my life, allow me to enjoy, to be fulfilled, and things like that. So it's amazing that you are actually shifting your questions, actually asking the right question to actually for your next step. I wish more people would be more like that.
Yeah.
So one final question for you. So what's next? What's your dream?
I used to say this, I think it's still true. I love traveling. We travel a lot. I think my dream someday, I love kids, I love family, I love all of that, is I always said, I will know I have made it when I'm on the beach in St. Bart's in this house called Villa Cristal. I have my easel on the deck and I'm painting the ocean. Going back to my roots of just loving to be creative, paint, draw, put things together. And I think the last probably 10 years have been so crazy. And, I've been so focused on doing a good job for everybody else that I was too stressed to be able to be creative, because there were always something else I had to do, whether it was taking care of kids, whether it was, making sure that the project was done, keeping clients happy, etc., that even doing my art was a stress. It wasn't enjoyable because I had too many other things to do. So if I can be on that beach with an easel and painting the ocean, I will know that I'm in peace. I've accomplished everything I needed to accomplish, and I am able to, go and be creative again. So I think that's my future goal, is to eventually get to that place where I'm retired, I've got my grandkids around me, and I'm able to pull out my easel and just paint that ocean. So
amazing. Thank you for sharing your journey to inspire others.
Yeah, thank you.